The first thing I saw that morning was a woman in my kitchen wearing my shirt. Not a woman I knew. Not a woman I recognized. Just a stranger in a white dress shirt that I knew for a fact was mine. Standing barefoot by my stove like she'd lived there her whole life. Be honest with me for a second. If you woke up on your busted old couch and saw that, what would you think? My name is Marcus Johnson, and this is the story of how one rainy night, a broken down car, and a decision that didn't feel like a decision at all flipped my entire life upside down. My home, my bank account, my future, even the way I see what's fair in this world. That morning when I opened my eyes, my neck was killing me. My back was screaming, and my first thought was just, man, I'm getting too old to be sleeping on this couch. Then I heard it. That little hiss from the coffee maker, the clink of a spoon against a mug, the soft sound of someone moving around in my kitchen. At first I thought maybe Zoe had decided she was a big girl now and tried to make breakfast, but Zoe is 7. And when she is in the kitchen, you hear chaos. Cabinet doors, cereal boxes, something falling, her singing to herself. The sound was different. Calm. Controlled. I pushed myself up on one elbow, eyes still half shut, and turned my head toward the kitchen. And that's when I froze. There she was, tall, bare feet on my old tile. Hair a little messy, but not in a bad way, shirt hanging just enough to be dangerous for my blood pressure, holding my chipped mug in one hand, stirring coffee with the other like she'd done it there 100 times. She looked over at me, eyes sharp and awake, and smiled like this was the most normal thing in the world. "You really don't remember last night, do you?" she said. My brain tried to boot up and crashed twice. I sounded like an old car that wouldn't start. "Who are you?" She set the mug down, carefully, not breaking eye contact. "I'm the woman whose car you pulled out of a tree in the storm," she said. And then she added almost casually, "and whose company owns your house." That line hit me like a bucket of cold water. Her company owns my house. Before I could even get to that mess, I heard a little giggle coming from the hallway, and my daughter's voice, high and amused. "Daddy, why is that lady in your shirt?" "Yeah, that happened." Let me rewind. Because the story didn't start with my shirt, or her coffee, or that line about owning my house. It started with rain. Real rain. The kind that makes the sky look angry. The kind that turns streets into rivers and makes old houses like mine groan in their foundations. Thunder rolling like somebody dragging furniture across the sky, lightning flashing so bright it lit up all the cracks in my ceiling. I was on my way home from a late job. I used to be an engineer. Nice office, clean clothes, predictable paycheck, until life decided it wanted to see what I was made of and stripped all that away. Divorce, layoffs, a few bad breaks, a couple of my own stupid mistakes, and suddenly I was the guy you called when your pipes burst or your lights went out. Freelance repair work. Plumber on Monday, electrician on Tuesday, handyman the rest of the week. Whatever kept the heat on, and the fridge from looking like a desert. There's one thing that never changed, though. My daughter, Zoe, 7 years old, brown skin like mine. Hair in tight curls that have a mind of their own, eyes that see way too much. She's the one thing in my life that makes sense even when nothing else does. We don't have much, and we both know it. There have been nights where dinner was rice and whatever we could find in the back of the fridge. Days when the landlord's letters piled up on the table like storm clouds. Every time it got heavy, I'd pull Zoe close and say the same thing. "We may be broke," I'd tell her, tapping her forehead with my finger, "but we don't break." She'd nod serious like I'd just told her the secret of the universe. "We don't break," she'd repeat. You say something like that. Enough times you start to wonder if you're trying to keep your kid strong, or just trying to convince yourself you're still standing. That night, though, I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about getting home without my truck falling apart in the flood. Wipers going full speed, but the rain still coming down faster. Radio turned off so I could hear the engine, my eyes squinting through the windshield, trying to follow the vague memory of lanes on the road. That's when I saw the car. You know how some things don't belong in certain places. Like a tuxedo at a kid's birthday party, or a chandelier in a trailer. That car was like that. Sleek black, way too expensive to be half wrapped around a tree on the side of the road in my neighborhood. The front was smashed hood, crumpled like paper, one headlight, hanging on by a wire, and flickering smoke starting to curl up from underneath. For half a second, I thought that's not my problem. I'll be real with you. I could have kept driving. No cops around, no ambulance sirens, yet the storm so loud it swallowed everything. Nobody would have known. But there are moments where something deeper than logic kicks in, and you move before you think. The next thing I remember, my truck was pulled over. My door was open, and I was in the rain, soaked to the bone. In 2 seconds, shoes sliding in the mud as I ran toward that car. I saw her through the glass. Driver's seat. Airbag deflated against her chest. Seatbelt tight across her head, tilted to the side. Eyes wide and glassy in the flickering light. She looked terrified, and very, very human. "Hey!" I yelled, slapping my hand against the glass. "Can you hear me?" Her lips moved. "Help!" she gasped, voice faint. "Please, I can't get out." The seatbelt buckle was jammed. Her hands were shaking too hard to do anything. She clawed at it. Fingers slipping. Looking back now, I can remember details. The way her watch caught the light, the cut of her suit. The fact that the shoes on the passenger side were definitely not cheap. But in that moment, I didn't see any of that. I just saw someone stuck and scared. I yanked at the door handle, jammed. I grabbed my elbow and slammed it into the side window. Once, twice. Third, hit glass, shattered inward rain blowing in with it. Little shards cut my forearm, but adrenaline doesn't care. Hey, look at me," I said, leaning in through the shattered window, fumbling for the buckle. "You're okay. I've got you." It wouldn't release. Of course it wouldn't. It was one of those nights. I dug into my pocket, pulled out the small knife I carry from job to job. Blade-out teeth clenched. I started sawing through that belt while she cried and tried not to pass out. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew I was standing in a puddle, leaning into a car that might light up any second. And then I smelled it. Gasoline, sharp and heavy. If it were you, let me ask you this. Would you have backed away right there or kept going? The belt finally snapped. She sagged forward, half falling into my arms. I shifted, hooked my arms under her, and dragged her out of the window as gently as I could. Her weight limp against me. Rain pounding down so hard, neither of us could see straight. We stumbled across the road into the ditch on the other side, slipping in the mud, my boots sucking into the muck with every step. The second I lowered her into the grass and turned back, there was this deep, ugly boom behind us. I watched her car burst into flames, orange and white in the rain, heat hitting my face, even from where we stood. She flinched, hands clutching at my jacket. "I'm sorry," she kept saying, voice breaking. "I'm sorry, I can't breathe." Hey, you're out," I told her. "You hear me? You're not in the car anymore. You're safe now." Her breathing was shallow, ragged, teetering between panic and unconsciousness. I looked up and down that empty street, main pouring, no lights, no sirens. Nothing but me, her, and a burning car. The hospital was at least 20 minutes away on a good night, and this was not a good night. Half the roads between here and there were probably underwater. "My place is close," I said almost to myself. "We can't sit out here in this." I picked her up again, half carrying, half dragging her back to my truck. Got her into the passenger seat, buckled her in. Wiped rain out of her face with my sleeve. "Stay with me," I muttered, as I slammed my door and turned the key. "Come on, old girl, don't pick tonight to die." The engine coughed, caught, and we were moving. We pulled up in front of my house. Small, paint-faded front step, cracked roof, patched more times than I want to admit. I carried her inside, kicked the door shut behind us, and took her straight to my bedroom. My room is nothing fancy. Queen mattress that sags a little in the middle second-hand dresser lamp with a crooked shade. But that night, it might as well have been the emergency room. I peeled off her soaked jacket, her suit clinging to her fingers stiff as I tried to unbutton enough to keep her from freezing. I'm a man, I notice things, and I'm not going to pretend I didn't see she was beautiful, but I also wasn't trying anything stupid. There's a difference. Blankets went over her thick ones. The good ones I have for winter. I tucked them around her, checked her breathing again. It slowed, steadied. I stood there for a second, dripping all over the floor shirt, sticking to my back, trying to process what just happened. Then I did what dads do. I moved. I checked on Zoe in her room, still sleeping like only kids can storm or not. I cleaned up the worst of the water in the hallway, turned up the heat, made sure the front door was locked. On my nightstand next to the bed where she lay, I noticed her things. A watch that probably cost more than my truck, a designer purse with some name I'd only seen in magazines, jewelry that looked real, not mall-bought. It registered, but it didn't change what I'd done. Rich, poor, whatever. She'd still be dead in that car if I'd kept driving. I grabbed my pillow and an old blanket, went to the living room, and made up the couch. That was going to be my bed for the night. I was sitting there in the dark, about an hour later, heart still racing, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, when I heard tiny footsteps on the floor. "Daddy," Zoe whispered from the hallway. I sat up. "Yeah, baby, I'm here." She patted over curls, wiled one sock halfway off her foot, rubbing her eyes. "Who's that lady in your bed?" she asked, voice small and curious. No judgment, just kid-level confusion. "She was in a car accident," I said softly. "Her car crashed in the storm. She needed help." "Is she gonna die?" Zoe asked, eyes wide. I pulled her close. "I don't think so," I said. "We got to her in time. She's sleeping now, getting warm. That's a good sign." Zoe laid her head against my chest, listening to my heartbeat. "You're a good guy, Daddy," she said eventually, like she was stating a fact. "You always help people." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "I'm just doing what is right," I told her. She nodded against me, satisfied with that answer. And pretty soon, she was asleep again, curled up on my lap, while I sat there, watching the light from the bedroom spill into the hallway. Lightning flashed one more time outside, long and bright, and for a second, it lit up the woman's face through the crack in my door. Even asleep, she looked strong. Not just pretty, not just rich. Strong and used to being in control. And I remember thinking, "Who are you?" Morning answered part of that question, and then asked a whole lot of new ones. I woke up to sunlight trying to squeeze its way through the blinds. My back stiff from the couch. Zoe's foot wedged under my ribs, a blanket tangled around us both. The storm was gone. The house was quiet. Then I heard it. The soft sound of someone moving in the kitchen. The smell of coffee, the faint scrape of a chair across the floor. For half a second, I thought maybe I'd dreamed the whole thing, that the woman was gone, that somewhere out there, she was waking up in her own bed, calling a private doctor, pretending last night never happened. Then I turned my head and saw her, in my shirt, in my kitchen. She looked different in the daylight. Less like a victim, more like someone who could buy the block if she felt like it. Hair down around her shoulders, bare legs, my white dress, shirt falling mid-thigh, sleeves rolled up, collar open. She had this calmness about her, this quiet confidence, like she was used to walking into rooms and having everything bend around her without her raising her voice. Our eyes met, and she gave me this small, knowing smile. "Good morning," she said, like we were two co-workers in an office break room, and not a stranger. And the man who dragged her out of a fire hours before. "You're, I blinked, then shook my head. "You're awake." "Very," she said, "and alive thanks to you." She moved around my kitchen like she owned it, grabbing sugar from the cabinet, opening the fridge like she'd done it before. Something in me bristled at that. This was my space, broken as it was. I pushed the blanket off, stood up, trying to regain some sense of control. "I can call you a cab," I said, "or your driver, or something." "No need," she said, not looking up from her coffee. "My driver's outside. He's been there since 6. You could have left hours ago," I said, confused. "I know," she replied, finally turning to face me fully. "I stayed because I wanted to thank you properly." Her eyes flicked to my shirt on her body, then back to my face. "I hope you don't mind," she added. My clothes were soaked. This was the only dry thing I could find that fit. Before I could answer, a little voice piped up from the hallway. "Hi," Zoe said suddenly right there, all big eyes and bedhead clutching her stuffed giraffe. "Are you my dad's girlfriend?" I almost swallowed my tongue. The woman did something that threw me. She crouched down so she was on Zoe's level. "No," she said gently. "I'm just someone your dad helped last night. He's very brave." Zoe nodded like, "Yeah, that tracks." Then looked at me. "She's wearing your shirt," she said loudly. "Yeah, I noticed," I muttered. Zoe wandered off toward the bathroom, humming, leaving me alone with the stranger in my shirt. An awkward silence settled. "I can transfer some money for your trouble," she said suddenly, as if we'd been in the middle of that conversation. She went to the small chair by the table, picked up her purse, sleek black, definitely expensive, and pulled out a leather wallet that looked like it had never known a wrinkle. She took out a stack of bills, hundreds, and laid them neatly on the table between us. "This should cover last night," she said matter-of-factly. "The bed, the clothes, the inconvenience." I stared at the money, then at her, then back at the money. "What's that for?" I asked, even though I knew exactly what she thought she was doing. "For helping me," she said. "For letting me stay here. For—" She waved her hand vaguely. "All of it." My jaw clenched. "I didn't pull you out of that car as a paid service," I said slowly. "It wasn't a job." She shrugged slightly. "I understand. Think of it as a gesture then. Gratitude." Then she added with the faintest hint of amusement, "And for the dry cleaning bill. That shirt probably needs it now." And that's when something in me snapped right there in that tiny kitchen. It wasn't just about the cash. It was what it represented. This feeling that we had been in 2 different stories last night. In mine, it was a moment that mattered, a moment where life and death hung in the balance, and I chose to stop. In hers, apparently, it was a situation with a price. I picked up the stack of money, pressed it back toward her. "Take it," I said. "I don't need your money." Her expression didn't change much, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or a flash of annoyance. "Most people would be grateful," she said calmly. "Most people would take it." "I'm not most people," I replied, heat rising in my chest. "And I didn't do it for a payout." I took a breath, trying not to let my frustration spill over onto the floor. "You think writing a number on this table makes you generous?" I said. "You have no idea what generous means." She tilted her head slightly. "Enlighten me." "Generous is stopping on a flooded road because you see headlights where they shouldn't be," I said, voice low. "Generous is pulling a stranger out of a burning car because you wouldn't be able to live with yourself if you drove past and saw it on the news later. Generous is doing it knowing they might never say thank you, knowing they might never even remember your face." I looked her dead in the eye. "What you just did," I said, tapping the bills, "that's not generosity. That's you trying to turn what happened into a transaction." For the first time since I'd seen her, she looked like I'd knocked her off balance. She held my gaze for a moment, then nodded once. "You're right," she said quietly. "I'm sorry. That was the wrong way to handle it." She took the money back, slid it into her wallet, closed her purse. She moved to the door, then paused with her hand on the knob and glanced back at me. "What's your name?" she asked. "Marcus," I said. "Marcus Johnson." She repeated it slowly like she was saving it somewhere. "Marcus Johnson," she said. "I won't forget that." and then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, and the house felt weirdly silent. Zoe peeked out from behind the corner. "Is she your girlfriend now?" she asked again. "No, baby." I sighed. "She's, complicated." "I think she likes you," Zoe said. "Yeah," I asked, half amused, half exhausted. "How can you tell?" "She looked at you the way you look at pancakes on Saturday," she said seriously. I couldn't help it. I laughed. "Like I want to eat them," I teased. "Like they make you happy," she corrected matter-of-factly. Kids have a way of cutting straight through to the truth you don't want to admit. I tried to shake it off. I made breakfast. Dropped Zoe at school, went to a job, came home, counted my cash like I always did, trying to stretch every dollar. Later that afternoon, I was standing in the kitchen stirring a pot of rice, the TV on in the living room, playing some news segment I wasn't really paying attention to. Then I heard the anchor say a name that made everything inside me stop. CEO Victoria Sterling, survivor of last night's car crash. I turned around slowly, spoon still in my hand. On the screen, surrounded by microphones and cameras, was the woman from my kitchen. Different outfit, full hair and makeup, but still unmistakably her. Behind her, a huge building with glass walls and a shiny logo, Sterling Industries. The anchor went on. Known for her aggressive business strategies and rapid expansion, Sterling is one of the most powerful CEOs in the state. The reporter standing outside the building explained how she'd been in a crash on the east side during the storm. How some unnamed local resident had pulled her from the wreck before the car exploded. How she was back at work already. Because of course people like that don't take days off. Then they played a short clip of her speaking at the press conference. "He was kind," she said into the sea of microphones. "He was humble. He refused any payment. That kind of integrity. You can't buy that." I just stood there, wooden spoon dripping rice water onto the floor, staring at the screen. "Daddy," Zoe gasped from the doorway, following my gaze. "That's the lady from our house." "Yeah," I said. "Looks like it." "She's famous," Zoe said, eyes wide. "Apparently," I muttered. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded. I shook my head, half laughing. "Because I didn't know, kiddo." I turned the TV off. Stood there for a second in the quiet, absorbing the fact that I had just told off a billionaire in my kitchen and shoved her money back in her purse. "Of course," I said out loud finally. "Of course that's who she is. If you were me right then, would you have felt proud? Or would you have felt stupid?" I felt both. I figured that was it. One weird night, one weird morning, a strange twist of fate, and then we'd go back to our separate worlds. She had skyscrapers and stock prices and magazine covers to worry about. I had leaky faucets, overdue bills, and Zoe's school shoes to think about. I was wrong. 3 days later, I was back at Zoe's school, not as a dad this time, but as the guy fixing the mess. A pipe in the teacher's lounge had decided it was tired of holding water and exploded, soaking the wall, the floor, and some very upset coffee makers. I was on my back under the sink wrench and hand shirt already stained, trying to convince a rusted joint to come loose without taking half the wall with it. The window in the lounge looked out onto the parking lot. I wasn't paying attention to it. I was focused on the stubborn metal in front of me. Then I heard it. Not the usual sound of tired engines and squeaky brakes. Something smoother, deeper, expensive. The room got quiet in a way that made me look up. People had stopped talking. Teachers were staring past me. I slid out from under the sink just enough to see. A black sedan glided into the lot. Paint shining, windows tinted. The car door opened, and a driver in a suit stepped out. Walked around and opened the back door like he'd done it 1,000 times. And there she was again, Victoria Sterling. In a white suit this time, heels clicking, sunglasses on. Walking through that parking lot like it was another boardroom. She didn't look around. Didn't check the sign to make sure it was the right school. She walked straight toward the building, straight toward the teacher's lounge. Straight toward me. My stomach did this weird flip. She stepped through the door, took off her sunglasses, and every conversation in the room died instantly. Mr. Johnson, she said, eyes locked on mine. Voice smooth but serious. We need to talk. If this is about the money, I said, already annoyed, I told you I don't want it. It's not about the money, she said. It's about the truth. Pattern interrupt right here. This is where everything turns. She slipped a phone out of her bag, tapped something on the screen, then turned it toward me. Grainy footage in black and white. Time stamp in the corner. A security camera from across the street, maybe. It showed my truck pulling over the burning car, me dragging her across the road, carrying her away from the flames. My face was clear. Determined, tired, soaked. You saved my life, she said quietly. I didn't even say thank you properly. You already did, I said, by walking away and not arguing when I told you to keep your money. She flinched just a little. That was cold, she said. So was turning what happened into a transaction, I answered. We stared at each other in that fluorescent-lit teacher's lounge, while teachers pretended not to listen, and failed miserably. Then she did something I didn't expect. She looked out the window behind me toward the playground. Zoe was out there, running with a pack of kids, hair flying, laughing loud sneakers, kicking up dust. She looked free in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. She's your daughter? Victoria asked. Yeah, I said. That's Zoe. She's beautiful, she said. She looks like you. I shrugged, more touched than I wanted to admit. Poor kid. Something softened around her eyes. She's lucky to have you, Victoria said. I'm lucky to have her, I answered. She turned back to me, took a breath like she was about to step off a ledge. Marcus, she said. I came here to apologize and to make something right. You don't owe me anything, I said automatically, because that's what you say when you're used to life not owing you anything. Maybe not, she replied. But I owe myself a shot at being the kind of person I want to be, not just the one my job turned me into. She reached into her bag again and pulled out an envelope with a familiar logo on it. My landlord's property management company. Open it, she said. I did. It was a contract. Legal language numbers, signatures. As of yesterday, she said, Sterling Holdings owns the building you currently rent. Your house is part of that purchase. My vision tunneled a little. You bought my landlord? I asked. I bought the company that owns your street, she said. And as of this morning, your account is settled. I flipped the pages, scanning, my heart pounding. No balance due, no rent. Deed transfer attached. You own your house now, she said simply. Free and clear. I stepped back, the room tilting for a second. If somebody handed you the deed to the place you thought you might someday get evicted, from where you'd counted pennies at that kitchen table and prayed nothing else would break, how would you react? I didn't feel grateful at first. I felt furious. You think kindness is a bill you can pay off with paperwork, I said, voice low. That you can buy your way out of feeling indebted by tossing me a house. Her eyes flashed. That's not what this is. Then what is it? I demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it feels like you're trying to erase the fact that for one night you needed someone like me. For a second, I thought she was going to snap back. Old habits, old armor. Instead, she sighed. Can I be honest with you? She asked. That would be a refreshing change, I said. I grew up in the system, she said. Foster homes, group homes, cheap shoes, hand-me-downs, food stamps. All of it. I learned pretty early that nobody was coming to save me. If I wanted out, I had to earn it. She glanced around the room, then back at me. I built my company with that mindset, she said. No mercy, no favors, no handouts. You work, you get paid. Simple. She looked down at the envelope in my hand. So when you pulled me out of that car, she continued, my first instinct when I woke up in your house was to pay you. That's how I've learned to relate to people. You have I give. Balanced. She met my eyes again. But when you pushed the money back, she said, you shoved something in my face that I didn't want to see. That there are still people who do the right thing for no reward. And that somewhere along the way, I stopped being one of them. She gestured toward the window again, where Zoe was hanging upside down on the monkey bars, laughing like the world had never hurt her. I don't want your daughter growing up thinking her father's integrity is something she has to apologize for, she said. I want her to grow up in a house nobody can take from her, because you hit a rough patch. She took another envelope out of her bag. This one, thicker, heavier. And I don't just want to fix it for you, she said. I want to fix it for people like you. Inside the second envelope was a proposal neatly typed with a bold title at the top that stopped me cold. The Johnson Fund. I looked up. You named it after me, I asked. I had to call it something, she said. I figured I'd name it after the guy who reminded me what character looks like. I skimmed the pages. A fund for single parents with emphasis on single fathers. Financial assistance. Job training. Child care emergency housing support. This is real, I asked. You're actually going to do this? Already started, she said. The board thinks it's a PR play. The accountants think it's a tax shield. I know it's penance, and maybe a second chance at being the kind of human I'd be proud to tell my younger self about. She stepped closer. But I don't want this to be another rich person project that looks good in photos and does nothing on the ground, she said. I need someone who knows what it's like to choose between gas and groceries. Someone who knows who's falling through the cracks. You want me to run this? I asked, half joking. I want you to guide it, she answered. Be the guy who says this is helping. This is not this. Looks good on paper but doesn't mean anything on this block. If I say yes, I said slowly, we do it my way. No cameras in people's faces when they're at their lowest. No pretending to care about stories you are going to forget tomorrow. We help quietly. We listen first. Deal, she said without hesitating. And if at any point I feel like it's about your image more than their lives, I added, I walk, and I will tell everyone exactly why. Her lips twitched in a half smile. I wouldn't expect anything less from the man who threw $2,000 back at me, she said. She held out her hand. I looked at it, at the envelope out the window at my daughter, then at the stack of late notices that still lived in my memory. I took her hand. All right, I said. Let's do it. And that right there, that handshake in a school hallway, that was the twist that flipped everything. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Fast forward a little. Big downtown convention center. Glass everywhere. People in suits and dresses who look like they eat appetizers with tiny forks I can't pronounce. Lights, cameras, a banner with my last name 10 feet tall behind a fancy stage. The Johnson Fund launch gala. I still remember reading that and thinking this has to be a mistake. Backstage, I was in a suit that wasn't mine. Dark fits better than anything I've ever owned, tie so tight I felt like I was being slowly strangled. My hands were sweating. Zoe in a little dress with her hair braided special sat next to me, swinging her feet. Are you nervous? She asked. What gave it away? I said. You're breathing weird, she said. And you keep doing this. She mimicked me tugging at an imaginary tie. I laughed, shook my head. I'm just a handyman, Zoe, I said. These people are used to speeches and spotlights. So what? She said, shrugging. You pulled a lady out of a burning car. That's cooler than talking. You know what I mean. Kids keep you honest. A stage manager popped his head in. Mr. Johnson, you're on in 5, he said. On where? I asked. I thought I was just sitting at a table in the dark eating tiny food. He blinked. Miss Sterling didn't tell you. My stomach dropped. Tell me what? She wants you on stage with her, he said. She's announcing the fund and then bringing you out. Of course she was. We walked toward the wings. I could hear the crowd on the other side, clinking glasses, low conversations, the murmur of money. The lights dimmed. Music swelled. The MC's voice boomed over the sound system, introducing the incomparable Victoria Sterling. She walked out, and the room went quiet like someone hit mute. I'd seen her in a lot of settings by then. Soaked, shaking barefoot in my kitchen, standing in my kids' school hallway with envelopes sitting on folding chairs in cramped living rooms, listening to people tell stories that sounded like my own. This version of her, in a black dress, hair done, posture straight, owning a room full of power players, was yet another person, and also all of them at once. "Good evening," she began, voice smooth and steady. "Thank you for being here tonight. I've launched companies before, I've announced deals. I've talked about numbers and growth and projections. Tonight, I want to talk about something different. I want to talk about what happens when someone reminds you who you used to want to be." She told them the story. The crash, the storm, the stranger who pulled her out the money she tried to offer. The way I threw it back and told her she couldn't buy what she thought she was buying. She didn't name me yet, just called me a man in an old truck who still believed doing the right thing was enough. Then she said my name. "This fund exists because of one person," she said. "A man who refused to put a price on his integrity. Marcus Johnson. Will you join me up here?" My heart dropped into my shoes. The stage manager nudged me. Zoe whispered, "Go, Daddy." Eyes wide. I walked out, and the lights hit me like a wall. Faces. So many faces. Phones up recording. A couple news cameras in the back. My legs suddenly felt like rubber. Victoria handed me a microphone, smiling like this was all going exactly how she'd planned. "Say something," she whispered. "You tricked me," I whispered back through my teeth. "Talk from your heart," she murmured. "You're good at that." I turned toward the crowd. Hey, I started. Then winced at myself. Like she said, I'm Marcus. I'm not really a stage person. I'm the guy you call when your sink explodes or your basement floods. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. "I'm used to being the invisible guy," I went on. "I come in, fix what's broken, and disappear before the party starts again." I looked down at the logo on the floor, my name on it, then back up. "That night in the storm," I said. I didn't stop for Victoria Sterling, the CEO. I didn't know who she was. I stopped because there was a car where no car should be. Smoke where no smoke should be. And if I'd driven past and seen news later about someone dying there, I wouldn't have been able to live with myself. I shifted my grip on the mic, feeling my nerves start to settle. "When she woke up in my house, she tried to pay me," I said. "A lot. More than I see in a month of crawling under people's sinks." A few people chuckled. "And I won't lie to you," I said. For a second, I looked at that money and thought about how much it could solve. Rent bills, shoes, maybe an actual vacation where my kid sees an ocean instead of a kiddie pool. I paused. "But there was this other part of me," I said, tapping my chest, "that knew if I took it in that moment, I'd be selling something I tell my daughter every single day, that we may be broke, but we don't break." I looked out over the crowd, so I pushed it back at her, I said. I told her she couldn't turn what happened into a transaction, that some things don't have a price tag. I glanced over at Victoria. To her credit, I said, she listened. She didn't call security. She didn't blacklist me from every job in the city. She drove away, and then she came back with something bigger than money. I gestured toward the screen behind us, where graphs and numbers had been replaced by photos of regular people. Parents with kids on their hips, old men in work jackets, single moms at kitchen tables. "This fund isn't about making me look good," I said. "And if it ever starts to be about that, I'll be the first one to burn my name off the sign." Laughter again. "This fund is about every parent who crawls into bed at night and stares at the ceiling doing math in their head," I continued. "It's about every dad who thinks he failed because he can't give his kid what he sees on TV, even though he's giving them something money can't buy. Presence, protection, love." I took a breath. "If that's you," I said, "I'm not here to tell you some rich person is going to swoop in and fix everything. That's a fairy tale. But I am here to tell you that tonight, we're starting something that says you're not invisible. That says your struggle is not a personal flaw. It's a crack in a system we all helped build." I looked right into one of the cameras. "And if you're watching this from a place like my neighborhood, wondering if anyone even cares you're still standing, this is me saying I see you. We see you." The room was so quiet you could hear ice melt. Then people stood. Applause rolled over me like thunder, but this time, there was no storm. Victoria reached over, squeezed my hand. Exactly what needed to be said, she whispered. After the event, after the speeches and the handshakes, and the million conversations with people who suddenly knew my name. We found ourselves in a quieter hallway off to the side. Zoe had fallen asleep on a lobby chair, little head tilted back, mouth slightly open. Her fancy shoes kicked off under the seat. "You did really well," Victoria said. "You ambushed me," I replied. "It worked," she said with a small grin. She reached into her clutch, smaller bag this time, still somehow a portal to another universe, and pulled out a slim box. "Before you yell at me, this is not a bribe," she said. "It's just something I wanted you to have." I opened it. Inside was a pen. Nice one. Heavy, simple, no unnecessary flash. There were words carved into the side. "For the man who didn't sell his kindness." My throat tightened. It was such a small thing compared to houses and funds and gala events, but somehow this hit me hardest. "You didn't have to do this," I said quietly. "I know," she said. "That's what makes it worth doing." We stood there, just looking at each other for a moment, all the noise of the event muffled behind the thick doors. "You changed my life, Marcus," she said eventually. "Funny," I answered. I was about to say the same thing. We were standing closer than two business partners usually do, close enough to notice the tiny scar near her eyebrow, the way her lipstick had faded after hours of talking. "I still have your shirt," she said, that little half-smile back on her lip. "I noticed," I said. "You wore it in that magazine piece last week." Her smile widened. "It's my favorite shirt now." "It was mine," I said. "Now I guess we share it." "Maybe," she said, "some things are better shared." A photographer cleared his throat behind us, and we both jumped like teenagers caught sneaking out. "Sorry," he said. "Not sorry at all. Can I get one shot of you two for the website?" We stood side by side, a little stiff. But as the flash went off, our hands brushed fingers, touching just enough to send a spark through my whole body. That photo ended up on a lot more than just the website. Time kept moving. We visited houses with peeling paint and big hearts inside. We sat in folding chairs in church basements and listened to stories that made us both cry in the car afterward. We wrote checks, sure, but we also built programs that gave people tools, not just temporary relief. Slowly, people stopped seeing me as that guy who fixed the boiler and started seeing me as the face of something bigger. That was weird. Maybe it's still weird. 1 year later, I stood outside a small garage on a street not too far from where I'd pulled her out of that crashed car. The sign above the door said, "Johnson Mechanics, in partnership with the Sterling Foundation." The inside smelled like oil rubber possibility. I had my own lifts, my own tools, a waiting room with more than one chair, a real coffee machine, not the $10 one that used to burn everything it touched. I was wiping grease off my hands when the doorbell chimed. "Tell me you got the alignment machine working," I called out, expecting a parts guy. "It's working," a familiar voice said, "but I came to check on something else." I looked up. She stood there in jeans and that shirt. My shirt. Again. Sleeves rolled, tails half tucked in hair down, no heels, just sneakers. "Thought that thing belonged to me now," I said. "Consider it a joint asset," she said, twirling once. "Still fits." "Yeah," I said, fortunately. She walked the length of the shop, fingertips trailing over the workbench's eyes, landing on a framed photo of the three of us at some community event, Zoe with a gap-toothed smile between us. "This place is you," she said. "Honest, straightforward, no nonsense." "It's small," I said. "So are a lot of good things," she answered, before I could figure out how to respond to that in a way that didn't sound like a greeting card. Zoe burst in from the office in a blur of movement. "Victoria!" she yelled, nearly tackling her in a hug. "Guess what? Guess what? Guess what?" "What?" Victoria laughed, bracing herself. "I got the STEM scholarship," Zoe said in one breath. "Full ride. Everything paid." They sent an email. Dad printed it. We put it on the fridge. Are you serious? Victoria asked, eyes going wide, genuine joy lighting up her whole face. Zoe nodded so hard I thought her head might roll off. That's incredible, Victoria said, hugging her back hard. I am so proud of you. Zoe beamed like the sun had decided to move inside her chest. I stood there leaning against my workbench, watching them, and felt something inside me settle. Like all the random broken pieces of the last few years had finally clicked into a picture that made sense. After a while, Zoe ran back to the office to show someone the email again, leaving the two of us alone in the shop. I have something for you, Victoria said. You say that a lot, I replied. Should I be worried? This one comes with conditions, she said, pulling an envelope out of her bag. There's always conditions, I muttered, taking it. You can't open it yet, she said quickly. Then why give it to me? I asked, eyebrow up. Because I know myself, she said. If I don't hand it to you right now, I'll chicken out and burn it in my office later. That's serious, huh? I asked, suddenly very aware of the weight of that envelope. That's serious, she said. Open it tomorrow morning, when it's quiet, before the day gets loud. What if I hate what's inside? I asked. Then we deal with that, she said. And for the first time since I'd met her, she looked genuinely scared. Not of a car, not of a camera, of me. She reached up and laid her palm against my cheek. You make me feel like I'm not two different people, she said. You make me feel like the kid I was and the woman I am can sit at the same table. I swallowed. You make me feel like home, she finished. You are home, I said. I don't even know if I meant the shop my life or my chest, but it felt true in all three. We kissed. Not the tentative almost thing we'd almost done in that hallway a year back. This was grounded, real, built on 100 late-night calls and shared jokes and arguments about how far the fun should stretch. When she pulled back, she tapped the envelope in my hand. Tomorrow, she said. Promise. She walked out, bell chiming behind her. That envelope burned a hole in my brain all night. I put it on the kitchen table, and every time I walked past, my eyes found it. I made dinner around it. I helped Zoe with homework next to it. I almost sat on it at one point, because I was so determined to pretend it wasn't there. What's that? Zoe asked. Homework for grown-ups, I said. Adults are weird, she replied, and went back to her math. Morning came slow, sunlight through the blinds, coffee in my chipped mug. Zoe still asleep in her room. I sat down at the table with that envelope and just stared at it for a full minute. Then I opened it. There was a card inside. Handwritten, not typed. Her handwriting is a little messy, like her brain moves faster than her pen, and I've always liked that about her. Marcus, it started. You saved my life in a storm. But that was only the beginning. You pulled me out of a burning car. Yes. But you also pulled me out of a version of myself that I didn't like very much. You reminded me that kindness is the most powerful currency we have. That integrity is not for sale. That love without respect is just another kind of transaction. I'm not asking you this because I owe you. I'm asking you this because I can't imagine building anything else. Businesses, funds, breakfasts, bad jokes, quiet evenings, with anyone but you. Will you marry me? V. There was a second piece of paper. It was an actual wedding invitation mock-up with our names printed together like they'd always belonged that way. My eyes blurred. My hand shook. I laughed a little broken sound and felt tears hit the page. Zoe walked into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Daddy, are you crying? She asked, climbing onto the chair next to me. Yeah, I said, wiping at my face with the back of my hand. Yeah, I guess I am. Did something bad happen? She asked, voice small. Something impossible happened, I said. In a really good way. I handed her the card. She's 7, but she reads like she's older. She took her time, mouth moving as she went, line by line. Does this mean Victoria is going to be my mom? She asked, finally, looking up at me. Do you want that? I asked. She didn't even hesitate. More than anything, she said. Then yeah, I replied. pulling her into a hug so tight she squeaked. "That's exactly what it means." She screamed this high sound of pure joy, and we ended up dancing around the kitchen in our pajamas, knocking into chairs, laughing like fools. 6 months later, we stood in a small room filled with people we actually knew. No huge ballroom, no 8-tier cake, no choreographed first dance for social media. Just family friends. A couple of people from the fund who insisted on being there because they said, "You told us to show up for the good stuff too." Zoe stood between us in a white dress, with little flowers in her hair, holding both our hands. The officiant started the usual lines. "Do you Marcus take Victoria?" "I do," I cut in. Everyone laughed. "I didn't finish," he said. "I've heard enough," I replied. "I do. All the way. Every version of her." When it was her turn, he didn't even get halfway through the sentence before she said, "I do forever," almost tripping over the words in her rush to get them out. We kissed before he officially said, "You may now," and honestly nobody seemed to mind. At the reception, and I'm being generous calling it that, it was more like a really nice family cookout with better clothes. I pulled her aside and handed her a small box. "If this is another pen," she teased, "I'm going to need more pockets." "Just open it," I said. Inside was a key. Old metal worn smooth. She frowned slightly. "Is this?" "It's the key to my truck," I said. "The one from that night. I fixed her up. Took my time, did it right. New engine, new brakes, whole 9. She looked up at me, eyes bright. "You kept it all this time?" she asked. "Some things you don't throw away just because they've been through hell," I said. "You rebuild them. You make them stronger. You give them a second life." I glanced between the two of us. "That truck brought you to me," I said. "Seems only fair it stays in the family." She closed the box and tucked it to her chest. "Some things are worth keeping," she said softly. "Like us," I replied. "Especially us," she answered. We danced then, not gracefully, but happily. Zoe joined in, standing on our feet, holding onto our hands, as the three of us swayed. The sun started to set outside, sky turning that deep orange gold that made me think of fire and storms and second chances. And here's the part that sticks with me to Thimstost. As the music played, she leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Sometimes kindness saves a life." I kissed her forehead. "Sometimes it saves 2, I said. Zoe squeezed our hands. "Sometimes it saves 3, she added. "Now let me leave you with this, because I don't want this to just be a cute story you listen to and then forget. One night in the middle of a storm, I saw a car where a car shouldn't be and decided to stop. I didn't know there was a billion-dollar company attached to the person inside. I didn't know about houses or funds or weddings. I just knew there was a human being who needed help. We like to believe the world works that way. Right, you do. Good comes back. But here's the uncomfortable question. Do you really think it's always like that? For every story like mine, there are 1,000, where someone stops, helps, gives everything, and nobody ever comes back with a deed or a scholarship or a fund. There are single parents right now working 3 jobs, doing the right thing every day, and nobody's putting their name on a banner. Do you think that's fair? I'm grateful more than I can ever say for how my story turned out. I've got a house nobody can take. Work, I'm proud of a daughter who got a shot at a future brighter than mine, and a woman who matches my stubborn step for step. But I also know I got lucky. The bigger problem, the one I want you to think about, is why people like me have to get lucky at all. Why basic dignity and stability depend on coincidence or on catching the attention of someone with more power and money than you. If it were you driving that truck that night, would you have stopped? And if you were in her position, rich busy, used to everything having a price, would you have come back to the man who refused your money? Or would you have moved on and tried to forget how small you felt for a moment? I want to hear your honest answer. So if you're still here with me at the end of this story, first of all, thank you. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment and tell me, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had a moment where someone tried to put a price on your kindness or on your dignity? Did you take it, or did you push it back across the table and say, "No, not like this"? Tell me if you think people like Victoria are the solution, or if the system shouldn't need people like her to patch its holes in the first place. Agree. Disagree. Argue with me. Share your own story. I want this to be a conversation, not just a confession. If this hit you in any way, hit like, so more people hear it. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that their character matters, even when nobody's watching. And if you want to hear more real stories like this, messy, unfair, beautiful, all of it, make sure you subscribe and stick around. Because the smallest decision you make on a random night, to stop, to help, to say no to easy money, to say yes to something that scares you, might just be the first line in a story you never thought you'd get to live.